All right. Okay. The date, October 27th. I'm sorry, October 16th, 1927. The time, well, it wasn't Monday Night Football, I can tell you that. But since the game was played at the Polo Grounds, it was probably 2:30 in the afternoon, I was going to say. The teams, the Cleveland Bulldogs at the New York Giants. And the place, the Polo Grounds in New York City. This would be the second meeting of this young year between the Cleveland Bulldogs and the New York Giants. Now, interestingly, this is the Giants' championship season. Giants finished 11-1-1, and so needless to say, they lost one game and they tied one game. Both those games happened to be against the Cleveland Bulldogs. So after this game, the Giants just went on a roll, and they just started, winning, and they were beaten really. Let's pop this up here. They were after this game, they were just really. I mean, for 1927, they were beating up on some teams. They won after this game here. They won 13-0, 27-0, 16-0, 21-0, 25-0, 28-7, 13-7, 14-0, and 13-0. I mean, it was just beating teams. Their defense was absolutely phenomenal this season. They in the 13 games, they only gave up 20 points, grand total 20 points. To this point in time, right, they were had not given up a point yet. So these would be they lost this game. Spoiler alert. I do apologize. They did lose, lost this game to the Cleveland Bulldogs 6-0. These would be the first 6 points of the season that the Giants were giving up. This would be their fourth game. So the Giants started off after this game, after this loss here, the Giants were 2-1-1. The Giants, including this game here, in their first 4 games with this game, the Giants only scored 27 points. And they gave up 6. So you can see they had a really good defense, but they weren't scoring a lot of points, right? So to imagine that they're going to go from 2-1-1, run off the next basically 9 games in a row, just whooping up on people, and go and walk away 11-1-1 as the 1927 NFL champions. It was a bit of a stretch, right? But that's exactly what wound up happening. This team here, the Cleveland Bulldogs, will wind up having a very good record. I believe they were 8-4 on the season, or 8-4-1. They were 8-4-1. What made them very special was their offense. They led the league in scoring. They scored 209 points? They scored 209 points, the Cleveland Bulldogs, this particular season. Now, in the modern NFL, 209 points in one season is, they played through the 13 games, so they scored 200. So they weren't even averaging 20 points a game. But back in the day, back in 1927, there's a lot of points. Scored a lot of points, and the Giants were second. Giants scored 197 points. But what made the Cleveland Bulldogs so special was kind of Benny Friedman. He would wind up becoming a part of the New York Giants after the. I'm gonna kind of go over this in a little bit here. He would become the part of the Giants. After the 1927 season, the Bulldogs wound up becoming the Detroit Wolverines. And after 1928, they became the Detroit Wolverines. Benny Friedman was once again the quarterback of the Detroit Wolverines. And once again, they led the league in scoring once again. Well, after the 1928 season, they started going through some financial troubles. Tim Mara, the owner of the Giants, wanted wanted Benny Friedman from the Wolverines. So I believe he went after, I guess he asked, or made an offer or whatever to the Wolverines for Penei Friedman. It just wasn't basically like, hey, just can you give it to us? There was no draft. The draft wasn't until 1936. It wasn't like, well, I'll tell you what, you give us Penei Friedman, we'll give you 2 first-round drafts. There's none of that back then. So, but he tried to get Penei Friedman from the Wolverines, and they said no. So what wound up happening was they were in some financial difficulty. So Tim Mara he went out and bought the team. So, but he took some of the players from the Wolverines and infused them in with the Giants, and one of them actually wound up being Penei Friedman. And the first 2 years that Penei Friedman was with the Giants in 1929 and 1930, the Giants led the league in scoring. Unfortunately for them, 29 and 30, you can kind of look at it like they're possibly missing ring seasons, because the Giants had a very good offense. They just could not beat, or they could not get past, I guess, the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers, 29, 30, and 31 with the first 3 Peters. The Packers were very, very good. The Giants just could not get past that team. But the Giants would get Penei Friedman, and Penei Friedman would be with the Giants for a few seasons. But he was very, very special. He was very good. He had thrown a football. He was the first, like Joe Montana. He was very, very good. Even going back to his career at Michigan, which I'm going to go. I'll read over. It's like basically straight out of Wikipedia. Penei Friedman was a very, very special player. He was a native of Cleveland, Ohio. Friedman played college football as a halfback and a quarterback at Michigan from 1924 to 1926. Friedman played in the backfield on both offense and defense, handled kicking and return duties, and was known for his passing game. He was a consensus first-team All-American in both 1925 and 1926, and won the Chicago Tribune Silver Football Trophy as the most valuable player in the Big Ten Conference in 1926. Friedman also played 8 seasons in the National Football League, which back then, 8 seasons was a long time. He played for the Cleveland Bulldogs in 27, so this is his rookie season. And he was instrumental. As I said, the Cleveland Bulldogs, this particular game here that we're going to be talking about, instrumental in the win. It was only 6-0, but I believe he completed 11 out of 17 passes, which was very impressive back then. Whatever it was almost 2/3 of his passes. That was unbelievably good. And then, of course, he played for the Cleveland Bulldogs in 27. He played for the Detroit Wolverines in 28, which I just talked about. Then he played for the Giants for 3 seasons, 29, 30, and 31. Then he played his final 3 seasons with the Brooklyn Dodgers, 32, 33, and 34. So 8 seasons. So that's, very long career back then. He was the leading passer of his era and in the NFL, and is credited with revolutionizing the game with his passing prowess. He led the league in passing for 4 consecutive years from 27 to 30. And he was selected as the first team All-NFL quarterback in each of those years. He has also served as the head coach of the Giants in the last 2 games of the 1930 season. I've seen Leroy Andrews, Ray Andrews, or Roy Andrews, take your pick, was the coach of the Giants. And actually, I'll just say Roy Andrews. Roy Andrews was with Penei Friedman with the Bulldogs in 27. He was with Friedman with the Detroit Wolverines in 28. And when Tim Mara bought the team, Roy Andrews came with the team. So Roy Andrews in 29 and 30 was the coach of the Giants, except for the final 2 games of the season. There was like some I don't know, there was some dissension going on with the club because they had lost a couple of close games, which kind of like knocked them out of first place. And so Roy Andrews was, I guess, removed, from being the head coach for the final two games of the 1930 season. So Benny Friedman, I've also seen where Benny Friedman and Steve Owen, were the interim coaches for the final two games of the 1930 season. So it kind of seems like it depends upon what article you're reading or whatever it is. So it was either Benny Friedman was the interim coach for the final two games of the 30 season, or Benny Friedman and Steve Owen were the interim coaches for the final two games of the 1930 season. Then, of course, in the 1931 season, Steve Owen became the head coach of the New York Giants, where he was the coach from 1931 to 1953. And I don't think anybody's ever going to break that record. I mean, that's a coaching same team. That's a long time, and to be a coach that long in this NFL, this day and age, it's for the same team. It's almost. I mean, Tomlin might wind up doing that, right? But I mean, for the most part, it's. I don't know if anybody's ever going to break that for the Giants anyway. But anyway, let's see here. Both the games that he was the interim coach, both of them were victories. Then he was the head coach of the Dodgers during the 1932 season. Friedman later served as the head football coach at the City College of New York from 1934 to 41. He was also the first athletic director of Brandeis University, holding the position from 49 to 63. During World War II, he was a lieutenant. He was a part of the inaugural class of inductees into the College Football Hall of Fame in 1951, and inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2005. I think that was like way overdue for what he did. It's just I mean, you got to realize back then that what he was able to do passing the ball, was just amazing. He a lot of times what it was back then was like, okay, we're going to run on first down, we're going to run on second down, and if it's like third down and 9, then we'll throw a pass on third down, see what happens. But not with Benny. Benny would pass on first down, he'd pass on second down, and maybe run on third down. He would do the exact opposite. He would always have the defense off guard. And even George Halas pointed that out one time. He said, Benny would always keep you off guard. He would throw when other people would run, and he would run when other people would throw. Benny would dictate to you what he's going to do. You didn't dictate to him. The downs and distances didn't dictate nothing. Benny, it was up to him, and he was very good at throwing the football. Let's see here. So he passed away in 1982 at the age of 77. But he was very, 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 very special. Now the Cleveland Bulldogs here. Said the 1927 season here. Said they improved on their record in 19. Their previous record was the year before was 5-8-1. So they improved upon that. But the biggest thing, the reason why they improved upon that was a Benny Friedman. Now, interestingly, in 1927, their head coach was Roy Andrews, who was the Giants head coach for those two seasons. From, as I mentioned, 1929, 1930, Roy Andrews was the Giants coach. So, in 1927, they finished fourth in the league. Let's see, the team relocated to Detroit, Michigan after this season, playing one season as the Detroit Wolverines, which I mentioned. Now, they kind of stumbled, too, out of the blocks here. After they beat the Giants in this one particular game, they were only 1-2-1. The following week, they went on the road and they played the Bears at Wrigley Field. Actually, I think it might have been called Wrigley Field at the time, but I know somewhere in the 20, it was called the Cubs Park the name hadn't been changed yet to Wrigley Field just yet. So they got here, this is on Wikipedia. So they got here Wrigley Field, but it could have been called Cubs Park. But anyway, regardless, the following week, so this game was October 16th. The following Sunday, October 23rd, the Cleveland Bulldogs went to Chicago. They lost 14-12. Okay, let's look at the recap. I'm thinking they probably missed both extra points here. They scored 2 touchdowns and missed both extra points. Bulldogs. Yep. And actually, the difference in the game, actually, were 4 touchdowns scored. Nobody made any extra points. The difference in the game was the safety. The Bears scored a safety, gave them 2 points in the first quarter. So that was the difference in the game. If you take that safety away, the Bulldogs scored 12, the Bears scored 12. So the following week, saying October 23rd, 1927, the Bulldogs went to play the Bears in Wrigley Field. They lost 14-12. So that game put the Bulldogs with a record of 1-3-1. They finished 8-4-1. So they rattled off, 7 out of their final 8 games. And they scored some points. Obviously, they led the league in scoring, so they scored some points. They scored 21, then they scored 15, they scored 37, 22, they scored 30, they scored 32, and they scored 20. Their only blemish in that period there where they won 7 out of their final 8, they lost 22-0 to the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. So they didn't necessarily have the greatest defense in the world, but once after they got past that tie, with that loss to the Bears, the 14-12 loss to the Bears the following week, they went on a roll and they started scoring some points. All right, so the Cleveland Bulldogs, and interestingly, they were the 1924 NFL champions. So the Cleveland Bulldogs here, a little team history here. Once again, this is just all straight out of Wikipedia. Okay. I have I believe I have like 4 different articles to read, newspaper articles to read. So, there's some, nice little stories about this. But as I said, it wound up being 6-0, and Benny Friedman wound up being the star of the game. So this gave Tim Mara his first little taste, seeing of what, Benny Friedman could do. Tim Mara knew the star power, what a star player can do, not only for what they could do for a team, but the draw, getting people in the stands, paying people in the stands. And that's basically why he went out and he bought the Detroit Wolverines after the 28th season. Now, luckily for Mara, for the Giants, for us Giant fans, if you're a Giant fan watching this, Tim Mara was a bookkeeper, right? So he had money coming in from the Giants, but if he needed some extra money, he had his bookkeeping, and he often dipped into that to try to help bolster either the Giants team or the roster, whatever he had to do. So he had money on the side that he had coming in that he could go into, all right, and draw some money from, to help the Giants, keep them, either keep them afloat financially, or just straight up just try to make them better. It wasn't the way. It wasn't always the way. A lot of teams, if there was an owner, somebody bought the team or whatever it was, sometimes. That might have been their only source of income. And, a lot of teams lost money back then. And if you couldn't, it's like starting a business nowadays. A lot of times, they say if you're going to start a business, the first couple of years, you might be working for nothing, and if you can't, subsidize, and keep your business afloat, that's why a lot of new businesses, go out of business within the first year or so, right? Because they're either losing money, aren't making any money, or not making enough money to stay afloat, and that's why a lot of them go out of business. But it was the same thing back then. A lot of the the teams just financially, couldn't stay afloat financially, right? But thankfully for the Giants, they had Tim Mara. I mean, not only his determination, he sacrificed. He did a lot of things, and one of them he was really gung ho on keeping his team going. Really, a lot of it wasn't even so much for himself; it was for his two sons, Jack and Wellington. Quite often, he was asked, team's not making money, or it's not doing well financially, it's not drawing crowds, or this, that. Why don't you just give up on us, And he quite often would respond and said, I would, but he would. If I think it was something in one of the books I read. I think if I gave up on the Giants, my two sons would run me right out of the house. He was a heck of a guy. Let me tell you what. And I think it was in the 1930 season. He actually, it's just absolutely incredible if you think about it. He signed over the team. Wellington Mara became an owner of the football team at age 14. As crazy as that was, he was, truly, he was a businessman, absolutely, truly, but, just a heck of a father. He saw what this meant. He didn't even know what a touchdown was, Tim Mara. The first game ever at the Polo Grounds was October 18th, 1925. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets came. The Giants just played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets on October 17th in Frankfurt, in Philadelphia. Well, the following day, October 18th, at the Polo Grounds, they're playing each other again. Well, the Yellow Jackets won at 14-0. So when they scored their first touchdown, this is Tim Mara. He was sitting in the stands and everything. And Frankfurt scored a touchdown, and there was the Philadelphia fans traveled well, so there was a lot of Philadelphia fans there. So when Frankfurt scored their touchdown, there was some cheering and all going on, right? And somebody said, "There's a touchdown," and this, that, and the other thing. And Tim Mara looked. I can't remember. Jack was next to him. His young son Jack was. But I think one of his family members was sitting next to him, and he turned to him and he said, he said, "What's a touchdown?" He had no idea. No idea. He was, but also being a businessman too, a prideful businessman, shall we say, wanting to keep, the team going, not just seeing, it's like, I lost some money the first year, let's get rid of this. No, he saw the opportunity, he saw the overall, the big picture, the long-term picture, right? And that's why he kept, at times taking money out of his bookkeeping business to keep the Giants afloat. But not only that, he kept thinking about his two sons. And I said in 1930, I believe it was, he signed over, Jack and Wellington. As I said, Wellington was 14 at the time. He became part owner of the New York Football Giants. Absolutely crazy. So we're very, very lucky that we had Tim Mara as our owner. Tell you what, because if it was almost anybody else, Giants, as we know, may not be around. So, but anyway, Cleveland Bulldogs, very interesting franchise. As I said, 1924, they were the world champions. As I said, once again, this is straight out of Wikipedia. Cleveland Bulldogs were a team that played, obviously, in Cleveland, Ohio, in the National Football League. They were originally called the Indians in 1923, not to be confused with the Cleveland Indians NFL franchise in 1922. I'll tell you what, there was a lot of teams back then that were, there was the Cleveland Indians, there was the Pittsburgh Pirates, there was actually the Cincinnati Reds, there's the New York Giants, the Brooklyn Dodgers. There was a lot of teams that were named basically after baseball teams. However, after team owner Samuel Deutsch purchased, I think that's how you pronounce it, Deutsch, I think it's Deutsch, purchased the Canton Bulldogs in 1924, he merged the Canton team with his Indians and renamed his franchise the Cleveland Bulldogs. The Canton Bulldogs remained a part of the team until 1925 when they were sold back to Canton. The Cleveland Bulldogs played in the NFL until 1928 when they were relocated to Detroit and became the Wolverines. The team was later incorporated into the New York Giants in 1929. The Cleveland Bulldogs won the championship in 1924. Well, that was the thing, is that 1922 and 1923, the Canton Bulldogs were the champions. So in 1924, the Canton Bulldogs and the Cleveland Indians wound up merging. So they had like, I don't want to say like a super team or something like that. But, part of the reason, one of the biggest reasons why the Cleveland Bulldogs won the championship in 1924 was because they had the two-time world champion Canton Bulldogs on the roster. So that really, really helped them in the 1924 season. So a Bulldog team, three years in a row, 22, 23, and 24, wound up winning the championship in the NFL. Just in 1922 and 23, it was the Canton Bulldogs. In 1924, it was the Cleveland Bulldogs. The origin, Sam Deutsch, a Cleveland jeweler and boxing promoter, who also owned a minor league baseball team, bought an NFL franchise in 1923 and named the team the Indians. They played only 7 games in that first season, but they had a shot at the championship with a 3-0-3 record going into their final game against the Canton Bulldogs, who were also undefeated. Now, back then, there was no championship games, right? So it was basically the end of the season was the team who had the best overall winning percentage. Now, ties didn't count. So if they had a record of 3-0-3, basically they were undefeated. They were 3-0 as far as in the standings. They had a winning percentage of 1,000. The Indians were defeated 46-0 and posted a 3-1-3 league record, finishing 5th in the league, which comprised 20 teams at the time. However, in August 1924, Deutsch bought the defending NFL champions Canton Bulldogs for $2,500. The Bulldogs were experiencing heavy financial troubles at the time and were sold to Deutsch without much of a struggle. Deutsch combined the Cleveland Indians with the Canton Bulldogs, creating a new team, the Cleveland Bulldogs. Only 7 of the Canton players actually joined the new Bulldogs. Among them was player-coach Guy Chamberlain. The team played all of its home games at Dunn Field, although Deutsch returned the team to Canton for Thanksgiving that season. Interesting. And then we have, there was a controversy in 1924. The Cleveland Bulldogs won the NFL championship that year with a 7-1-1 record. After winning the first 6 games, the Bulldogs lost to the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets and entered a virtual tie with the Chicago Bears for first place in the standings. The Bears played more games but also had more ties, and their one loss had come in the season opener against the Bulldogs. The Bears attempted to have an after-season exhibition game counted toward the standings. However, in 1924, this was against NFL rules. In July 1924, NFL owners had agreed on a proposal that the 1924 NFL season would begin on September 27th and end on November 30th. Ironically, as it turned out, the proposal was made by Dutch Sterneman, co-owner of the Bears. On the official end date, Cleveland had a 7-1-1 record. The Bears had a 6-1-4 record. Ties didn't count at all in those days, so the Bulldogs were in first place with an .875 winning percentage to the Bears' .857. However, on December 7, 1924, the Bulldogs went to Chicago for a challenge match. The Bears won the game 23-0 and claimed that they deserved the NFL championship. They cited as precedent the 1921 championship decision. 1921, that wound up being the Staley swindle. You can, if you want to type that in, it'll pop up on Wikipedia, I'm sure, for you, and it'll basically tell you where kind of the Staleys, the Chicago Staleys, who in 1922 became the Chicago Bears, basically kind of swindled the Buffalo All-Americans out of their championship. But more on, as I said, if you want to read on the Staley swindle, you can read on that. It was 1921. You can read more about that in Wikipedia. They declared that there was no such thing as an exhibition game. The Bears did. So basically, this game that was played after the season should count in the standings. And that's a Bear thing back then. That's a George Halas Bear thing. Basically what the way the Bears were was when they could play an extra game at the end of the season, and if they wound up winning it, it would benefit them. That's what they wanted to do. That was a George Halas Chicago Bear kind of thing. That's what the Bears did back then. If they, the season's over, well, let's keep playing games until we get in the first place, and then we'll end the season. Yeah. So the issue wasn't settled. This issue wasn't settled until the owners' meeting in January, when the owners voted for Cleveland to take the title. The owners also decided of that meeting that the 1925 season would run through December 20th. So basically, the owners decided that this game that was played on December 7th, 1924, the Bears wound up winning, didn't count in the standings because the season ended at the end of November. Any games played after November 30th didn't count. Well, the Bears, once again, as I said, wanted it to count because it benefited them. As I said, the Bears, what they would do is it's like if the season ended and they were like in tie for first or almost tied for first, whatever, they would just let's keep playing more and more games until we get in the first place, and then we'll have all these extra games all count in the standings because that benefits us, right? And then once they played enough games at the end of the season, after the season was over with, then they would stop, and they found themselves in first place doing plenty more games. But if they found themselves in a tie for first or maybe in second place or something like that, they wanted to keep playing games until they got in the first place. Once they got in the first place, oh no, we're not playing no more games. That's a Chicago Bear thing. But this one particular season, the owners voted against them, and they gave the championship to the Bulldogs. They had a record of 7-1-1. They only played 9 games. The Bears played 11 games, but the Bears had 4 ties. Had the Bears won one of those tie games, they would have been 7-1-3. They would have had the same winning percentages as the Bulldogs, the Cleveland Bulldogs, and they might have been co-champions. So they had their chances. And in fact, out of those 4 of those ties, if they could have won 2 of those games, they would have been 8-1-2, and they would have been declared the champions. But it is what it is, right? But in 1925, several Canton businessmen purchased the rights to the old Canton Bulldog team from Deutsch for $3,000. The Bulldogs, now known as the Canton Bulldogs, once again, played in Canton during the 25 and 26 season. However, Deutsch continued to call his Cleveland franchise the Bulldogs. He also sold his Cleveland Indians half of the club to Herb Brandt in August of 1925. That season, the Cleveland Bulldogs fell to a dismal 5-8-1 record. The team performed poorly on the field and at the bank. By mid-November, the organization was nearly bankrupt. 1926, Brandt received authority from the league to suspend operations for 1 season. The Bulldogs then returned in 1927, bolstered by players from the folded Kansas City Cowboy franchise. Deutsch returned as the principal owner of this new Cleveland Bulldogs club. He, along with fellow investors Max Rosenblum, Brandt, Harry Gold, and Clinton Winfrey, built the new Bulldogs around native Clevelander Benny Friedman, a star quarterback from Michigan. The team finished 4th in the National Football League with a record of 8-4-1. At the end of the season, Elliot Fisher purchased the Bulldogs and moved the team to Detroit, renaming the team the Detroit Wolverines. The 1928 Wolverines team consisted of 12 former Bulldogs players. Before the 1929 season, Tim Mara, owner of the New York Giants, purchased the entire Wolverine squad, including Benny Friedman, and absorbed the team into his New York Giants franchise. 8 former Bulldog players ended up playing for the Giants that season. Let's see here. So in 1923, they were called the Cleveland Indians. They were 3-1-3. 1924, then when they won the championship, they were 7-1-1. 1925, they fell back to 5-8-1. 1926, they suspended operations for 1 year. And then the Cleveland Bulldogs, 1927, finished 8-4-1. Very, very respectable. I mean, you think, I mean, the thing was is that, you know, they had a good draw with Benny Friedman, right? Scored a lot of points, and they were 8-4-1. You would think that, you know, they'd be a little bit better of a financially, shall we say? But it was not meant to be. Trying to see here. Hold on, seasons. Oh. Trying to see what the that says. I know in 1928 the Detroit Wolverines, they scored 189 points. And they finished with a record of 7-2-1. They were in third place overall. The Providence Steamroller, 1928, wound up winning the whole thing. They were 8-1-2. The Detroit Wolverines were 7-2-1. But you know, they were a very good team. Very good team. 7-2-1. They scored the most points in the NFL. But I guess financially, they were not, you know, not doing so well financially. It just goes to show you. I mean, you can even have obviously a good team, scoring a bunch of points and do well, and still not do good financially. A lot of, obviously, obviously there was no TV rights, there was no selling uniforms, there was none of this, right? I mean, it was basically getting paid people in the stands, right? And a lot of teams financially had a hard time doing that. You know, as we get out of the 20s and start heading into the 30s, there was only 4 teams that survived. Right, in 1920, there was the Chicago Cardinals, and you had the Decatur Staleys. 1920. Well, 1921 became the Chicago Staleys. 1922 became the Chicago Bears. 1921, the Green Bay Packers. Right, and in 1925, you had the New York Giants. Those are the only 4 teams. Right. Then you had the Portsmouth Spartans, who became the Detroit Lions. Right, and then of course you had the Boston Braves in 32, who became the Washington Commanders. 33, you had the Eagles. But basically, in the 20s, you had a lot. Sometimes one year there was 22 teams. So there's a lot of teams. But basically, I got out of the 20s, only like 4 of them came out. So there was a lot of teams. I haven't looked, ever figured it out or whatever. How many different teams there were in the 20s. Because some of them folded up for a year, came back. You know, they were around. They just suspended operation for a year. Then they came back. They merged with another team, and then they came out here and they went. Yeah. So sometimes it's rather difficult to find out exactly how many teams there really were. But I mean, if you go back, I mean, there was the New York Brickley Giants, who only played like 2 games, got killed both games. There was the Tonawanda Cardex, who played, I think, 1 game in the NFL. I mean, there was just some teams that played like hardly any games, but they came and went. Yeah, so it was tough. It was tough. But, you know, thankfully, out of the 20s, there's only a few teams that made it out of the 20s, and thankfully the Giants were one of them, right? So most teams didn't. All right, so I said, so the Giants coming into this game here, they had beaten the Providence Steamroller 8-0. Then their second game of the season, they tied the Cleveland Bulldogs 0-0. They played in Cleveland on October 2nd. Then the following week, October 9th, they went and they played the Pottsville Maroons, and the Giants won that game 19-0. So after 3 games coming into this game, the Giants had 2 wins and a tie. So this game here on October 16th, 1927, against the Cleveland Bulldogs, was about 25,000 people showed up at the Polo Grounds. That's a big crowd, very big crowd. This would become the Giants' only loss of the season, basically due to Benny Friedman. So I got these articles here. What's it? All right, here we go. Pop these babies up. All right. And this one here, we got Benny completes 11 out of 17 passes. As I said, that's really, really good. This article's not real long, but Benny Friedman's Cleveland Bulldogs defeated the New York Giants in the National Football League game at the Polo Grounds yesterday, 6-0. Quarterback Friedman, a All-American at the University of Michigan last year, was the star, using the forward pass with deadly effect. His passes were successful in 11 of 17 attempts. The only touchdown was scored by Ximines, the right halfback, former Oklahoma star, who plunged over the line in the third period after Freeman's passes had carried the ball within striking distance. The Giants never threatened. Now here it says 20,000 persons saw the game. So this happens a lot. You read one article, it might say 15,000 people were there. You read another article, there's 17,000 people there. Another article say there'll be 20,000 people there. Right? 20,000 people saw the game, which was the second meeting of the teams this season. The other one was a scoreless tie. And I said, yes, they scored. Cleveland scored in the third period. All right, I'll just run over the starting lineups here, according to this article here. Okay, the left end for the Giants, this is all the Giants now, was Corrigan. Steve Owen was the left tackle. Nestor was the left guard. Murtaugh was the center. Alexander was the right guard. Henry was the right tackle. Hubbard was the right end. Cal Hubbard. Tut Imlay, love that name, was the quarterback for the Giants. Hinkie Haynes was the left halfback. Wyckoff was the right halfback, and Jack McBride was the fullback for the Giants. So the Giants on there here, and I'm not sure. Just looking here real fast for the. Okay, I guess not. They had Joe Guyon in there too. For the Giants. Sometimes he subbed in, but he wasn't. Apparently, didn't play in this game. So the Giants actually had three of their starters who are in the Hall of Fame: Steve Owen, Cal Hubbard, and Henry. Those 3 guys are in the Hall of Fame. Giants also had, as I said, Joe Guyon, who was basically a substitute. He was on the Hall of Fame as well, too. Now, for Cleveland, Cunningham was their left end. Cobb was their left tackle. Ryan Quist was their left guard. Smith was their center. Howard was their right guard. Owen was their right tackle. Munn was their right end. Benny Friedman was their quarterback. Weber was their left halfback. Simmons was their right halfback. And looks like Feather from Michigan. Hold on there. Trying to get this up here. 27. I got the roster. Oh, hold on there. Just want to try to figure out. Their fullback was Feather. Feather. Tiny Feather? Interesting. Tiny Feather. Elton Feather, but I guess they called him Tiny. 6'4", 197 pounds. He's not tiny. So Tiny Feather was the starting fullback for the let's see here. Oh. Okay. Let's see now here. Substitutions. This is substitutions for Cleveland. Backus went in at left end for Cunningham. Thomas went in for Weber at left halfback. Randalls went in for Backus. Who went in for Cunningham. Backus went in for Randalls. They seem like the same guys. DeWitts went in for Reinquist at left guard. Okay, now for the Giants, White went in for McBride at fullback. Haggerty went in for Tut Imlay at quarterback. Jappy went in for Cal Hubbard at the right end. Kendrick went in for Hinkie Haynes at left halfback. Mule Wilson went in for Haggerty. Let's see what else we got here. Hinkie Haynes went back into the game for Wyckoff at right halfback. So he was Hinkie Haynes started at left halfback. He got substituted and went back into the game at right halfback. And then McBride went in back in for White after White relieved McBride, and then McBride relieved White. So those are your substitutes. Ed Thorpe was the official. The umpire was John Reardon. Head linesman was Eddie Butler. And the time of the period was 15 minutes long. All right, so that's that one article. Next one we got. All right, this one here from the New York Times. Friedman passes repel Giants. Former Michigan star paves the way for Cleveland's score in the third period at the Polo Grounds. Simmons gets the touchdown. Plunges over after 35 and 15-yard aerials put the ball in position. Crowd of 25,000 sees the game. Benny Friedman's Cleveland Bulldogs opened the Metropolitan professional football season at the Polo Grounds yesterday by defeating the New York Giants 6-0. A crowd of about 25,000 was present. The first half found the big New York team too strong for the visitors, but in the second half, the brilliant passing of Friedman began to tell. And in the third period, the Westerners worked out their touchdown. They held the upper hand throughout the rest of the game and narrowly missed scoring again in the fourth period. There was much action during the first half, but nothing tangible resulted. And so far as the final score was concerned, the athletes wasted a half hour. Wow. The Giants offered the same sort of bruising line-breaking game they had played for the past two seasons, with McBride and Haynes bearing the brunt of it. Now, there was only 5 players from the 1925 season who played for the Giants in 25, 26, and 27. Hinkie Haynes and Jack McBride, the running back. Well, one was the left halfback, one was the halfback, one was Jack McBride was their fullback. There were 2 of the 5 guys that played all 3 of those seasons. So, McBride and Haynes, they varied it, and then with an they varied it now and then with an old-fashioned crossbuck. That's just describing basically the way that Jack McBride and Hinkie Haynes were running the ball. The tactics of the Giants brought them to the 20-yard line once during the second period, where they were stopped, and McBride, with Haynes holding the ball, tried a placement which went wide by several yards. McBride was known for his kicking, being a very good field goal kicker. He was a very, very good in his final season in 1924 in college, he led the entire college with successful field goal tries. So When he came to the Giants, he was known, obviously he was a very good fullback, but he was also known for being a good kicker. But obviously back in the day, being a good kicker meant you might have made 1 out of every 3 field goals. Nowadays, you make 1 out of every 3 field goals, you're looking for a job. So the Giants had a chance to kick a field goal in the second quarter, but they missed. On the other side, the huge line of the Giants stopped all the running that the Bulldogs tried and forced Freeman to turn to the air. There was better success here until Corrigan began rushing through from left end to tackle the former Michigan star before he could throw the ball. So the Giants, I guess, got in and got a couple sacks on him in the first half, I guess. Aerial plays are varied. Several gains of length came through the air, and about every variety of the pass was tried, with Weber and Feather making brilliant catches. The passing even included a variation of the ancient shoestring play in which the right end came out clear to the right sidelines and did everything but send up flares to announce his presence. Following this, Freeman threw the other way to Weber, and a good gain was made down the other sideline. So basically, get the right end, run it out to the right side. Yo, here I am. And the Giants, oh my God, he's waving his hands. Oh my God, they're going to throw over here. So Benny Freeman's like, yeah, here it comes, baby, here it comes. And the Giants, I guess, all ran over there to make the tackle and everything. And then there was their left end was standing wide open, I guess, on the other side. So they tried to fake the Giants out there. But the Westerners couldn't gain an inch when they reached the Giants' scoring territory, and the half ended with Freeman standing on the 50-yard line, preparing to try a placement. The pass from center shot through Thomas, who was to have held for the kick, and the half ended. So they were trying a field goal from midfield, but the snap, I guess, went through the holder, and the half ended. So apparently, according to this, like both teams maybe had a field goal try, and neither one was successful in the first half. Once to start of the first period, the Westerners reached the New York 35-yard line on passes, but Weber was forced to kick over the line. The Giants had a bit of offensive play after that, but McBride and Haynes were stopped after passing midfield, and the rest of the period was devoted mainly to punting on both sides. The Giants started again at the close of the opening period, and on the first play of the second period, McBride just made a first down on the 34-yard line. Then on a cross buck from McBride and Haynes and a fake of the same with McBride holding the ball, the Giants worked out a first down on the 20-yard line. They were held there, and the field goal try came. Late in the period, Freeman's passes had Cleveland threatening, but the Giants started going through and tackling passers for losses, and the half ended with the unsuccessful attempt by Freeman to get a kickoff. All right, so now we got, I guess, the second half here. It says Cleveland shows punch. The scoring started soon after the start of the second half. Cleveland kicked off, and the Giants immediately punted back. Freeman uncorked a pass that gained 35 yards with Tiny Feather on the receiving end, contributing a run to it. That was a first down on the Giants' 30-yard line, and this time the Westerners found the punch to carry it over. Ximines was the man chosen by Freeman to work out this score. Freeman turned in another pass to Ximines, who gained about 15 yards, and it was first down on the 14-yard line. Freeman and Ximines, with the latter doing most of it, then slammed into the middle of the Giants' line, and the line cracked wide open. Ooh. Ximines finally went over for the touchdown, but Freeman's placement for the extra point went wide. The Giants tired badly after that and were pretty well pushed all over the field during the remaining minutes of play. Haynes came back well with the next kickoff, and there was a forward pass from a lateral, Haynes to White to Haggerty, that gained some ground, but the attack soon petered out. Cleveland kept coming back in the scoring territory, and once after blocking a giant punt, Munn picked it up and ran to the Giants' 3-yard line. 2 plays were stopped, and then Fat Henry, who's a future Hall of Famer, stopped all this by the simple expedient of snatching the ball out of Freeman's arm and running with it in the other direction. He didn't go far because he was a big guy. He didn't go far, but he stopped that probable touchdown. This play was used successfully by the Giants earlier in the game. McBride doing this snatching, this time with Freeman again, the loser. So I'm not sure if they snatched the ball out of his hands or exactly what. But the Giants gained a bit in the last quarter with a triple lateral pass. Haynes on the final receiving end, but Cleveland stopped this. And at the close, the Westerners were again parading to a touchdown through the line. The Giants stopped them on the 20-yard line, and Freeman tossed a perfect aerial into the hands of Backus, waiting beyond the goal line, but he dropped it, and the game soon ended. So if Backus didn't drop a pass, the score could have been even a little bit worse. But both teams had their chances, But the important thing is, what do you do with your chances when you have them, right? The Giants had a chance here or there, very few, and they didn't do anything with them. The Cleveland Bulldogs had one chance, the one bet, and then one chance. They had three chances, but they made do on one of them, right? All right, we got another one here. Benny Friedman, former Michigan star and All-American quarterback, exhibited the same brand of forward passing that made him famous in college when the Cleveland Bulldogs defeated the Giants at the Polo Grounds yesterday. Now, this is funny. I love this. It was the official opening of the professional season, and about 30,000 fans witnessed the contest. One said 15 or 20. One said 25,000. This one said about 30,000 fans were there. The single touchdown was made early in the third quarter. A 35-yard pass to Tiny Feather started the march. After losing ground with a line plunge and failing the game by a try around end, Freeman threw two short passes that placed the ball on the Giants' 14-yard line. On the next play, Simmons went over for a touchdown. The try for point failed. So Simmons ran from 14 yards out. The Giants threatened to score in the second period when plunges by Haynes and McBride brought the ball to the Cleveland 20-yard line. McBride attempted a placement kick but failed to put the ball over the crossbar. All right, then I got one more here. It's right here. This one's a little bit longer than the one I just read. All right, let's see here. What does this say here? Bulldogs defeat the Giants 6-0. Completely outplay New York pro gridders at the Polo Grounds. Simmons scores touchdown. And this once again, this is kind of comical. A crowd of about 15,000 people. The last article I read said there was about 30,000. This one said there was about 15,000. So the New York Giants go down to defeat before the Cleveland Bulldogs in the opener of the professional football season at the Polo Grounds yesterday by a score of 6-0. Simmons, right halfback for the Bulldogs, crossed the goal line and planted the leather in the turf for the only touchdown of the game. Benny Friedman, All-American quarterback with Michigan University last year, attempted to kick the extra point, but the ball went wide. For two full periods, the teams battled back and forth, and the Giants managed to keep their record of not having had their goal line crossed once this season. That nobody crossed their goal line. They kept that record intact basically through the first half, but once the third quarter started, that record went by the wayside. As a matter of fact, the Giants carried the ball to the Bulldogs' 17-yard line at the beginning of the second quarter, but McBride missed his try for a placement kick from the 23-yard mark, and that was the last concrete opportunity the Homesters had to score during the game. From this moment until the final whistle, the Clevelanders were on the aggressive, and most of the play took place in the New York territory. Starting on their own 35-yard stripe, the Bulldogs began a drive early in the third period after an exchange of punts that did not end until they smashed their way past the last white line. A 35-yard forward pass hurled from Freeman into the waiting arms of Feathers brought the pigskin to the Giants' 30-yard mark. A line buck netted 3 more yards, and another pass Freeman to Ximines accounted for 13 more. The ball was now only a mere matter of 14 yards from the goalpost, and it required very little effort for the Bulldogs to bring it within a foot and a half from that point by carrying Penei forward on 3 successive plays. On the very next play, Ximines went over for a touchdown, and the game, to all intents and purposes, or to all the good that it did the Giants, was over. So if you notice here, like in the last article, it seemed like they brought the ball down to the 14, and it seemed like to me like they handed the ball to Ximines and he ran it over from the 14-yard line. Here, the ball was at the 14, and it required very little effort for the Bulldogs to bring the ball within a foot and a half from the point by carrying Penei forward on 3 successive plays. So Penei, it seems like he ran the ball 3 times and got it to the foot and a half yard line. It's where the other article said that the guy Ximines ran it in from 14. Sounded like he ran it in from 14 yards out. But here they got the ball down to the 1.5 foot line, within a foot and a half at that point by carrying Penei forward on 3 successive plays. On the very next play, Ximines went over for the touchdown. So some of this stuff gets a little, as you can see with the amount of fans in the stands, some of these articles are very conflicting. There's no ESPN or nothing like that. There's no all 22 film or nothing like that where you can actually see what actually happened. And, of course, there's nobody left alive from any of these games to talk about it, or if there is anybody alive from 1927 who actually was at this game, I really doubt if anybody's going to remember actually what happened. So exactly what happened here is anybody's guess. The fourth and final period was played entirely on the Giants' half of the field for while the ball changed hands not once but several times. The New York outfit was totally unable to do anything on the aggressive. The Bulldogs might have added another touchdown had not the referee's whistle been blown too soon. So I don't know exactly what that means. They think that I don't know. They thought the game was called too soon. I don't know. But also talked about too how Freeman threw a pass. The guy standing in the end zone. And he said he dropped the ball. Not, was it like this? Was he just standing there and the ball came here and it dropped through? I mean, this and some guy came in and tried to knock the ball away and he dropped it. Who knows? But apparently, the Bulldogs had several chances in the second half. As you also saw, there's another one. They got down deep inside the Giants' territory, down right by the goal line, and Fat Henry came in and somehow stole the ball from front. Once again, they said he took the ball from him. I mean, was Freeman going back like this, and the guy came in and just took the ball out of his hands and started running the other way? Was it a fumble? He picked the ball up and he started running the other way. Did he intercept the pass? He said he took the ball from him. Is Freeman standing there just waiting for somebody to take the ball from him? So who knows? But in the second half, apparently it looked like the Bulldogs were deep in Giants territory at least 3 times. So I guess in one small respect, the Giants should be happy that they only wound up losing 6-0, because they apparently just listening to this here, reading this and everything, the Giants didn't have many chances. They had that bad field goal try, but that was pretty much about it. So this game was pretty much dominated, especially in the second half, by the Cleveland Bulldogs. And the final score certainly could have been worse, without question. But they said this put the Giants' record at 2 wins, a tie, and a loss. And it would finish the season at 11-1-1. So the Giants were going on a roll here. The Giants would win their next 9 games. Out of those 9 games, 7 of them would be shut out. They'd only get scored on 2 more times. They only got scored on, out of their 13 games, they only got scored on 3 times. There was not one successful field goal try against the Giants in the whole 27 season, which is rather remarkable if you think about that. They played 13 games, and there was not one successful field goal try against the Giants. They only gave up 3 touchdowns. One of them was in this game here. But so at least thankfully for the Giants, after this game, who knows what happened? Somehow they woke up. Their defense was always good. Right? The defense propelled them for the rest of the season. But also the Giants somehow started finding an offense, because after these first, as I said, the first 4 games of the season, the Giants only scored 27 points. So this final run of the season, the final 9 games of the season, the Giants, their defense was as solid as ever, okay? And they started scoring some points. So the Giants in this game here, fell short. Cleveland Bulldogs came into town, were certainly the better team, and they wound up winning, and they prevailed 6-0. So that's what happened on this date, October 16th, 1927, in New York football Giants history. See you next time.